All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are finishing the Xanathar Sorcerer subclasses with the subclass that was reprinted from Sword Coast Adventures Guide, Storm Sorcery. Now, I guess the nice thing about this is we've seen two of Xanathar's classes. Now we get to compare it to a Sword Coast Adventures Guide class, and you can kind of see how their thought processes and class design kind of shifted over the years between the two books. Again, I don't know why so many of the Sword Coast Adventures Guides classes were reprinted in subsequent books, other than the Adventures League had this thing where up until this past year, you were only allowed to use the player's handbook and one other book to build your characters, and so that included new spells that were introduced. So, like, there were new spells that were introduced in Sword Coast Adventures Guide, but they were just the Bladesingers spells. Xanathar's introduced a ton of new, interesting spells, but you couldn't use them in the Adventures League if you used any of the Sword Coast Adventures Guide classes. The same was true when Elemental Evil came out. They came out with a bunch of elemental spells that came with it. But if you did Sword Coast Adventures Guide, you couldn't. And the Sword Coast Adventures Guide was supposed to be kind of limited to the Forgotten Realms, where Xanathar's is technically a little more broad, even though Xanathar is a Forgotten Realms character. Who knows? But yeah, let's jump into it. First things first, a little review of 5th edition class design. In 5th edition, every class is meant to play very, very differently right from the beginning. In order to do this, they have these things that what we call defining features. In order for it to be a defining feature, it has to show up within the first 2 levels. For the Sorcerer, their defining feature comes at 2nd level. Yeah, they choose their subclass at 1st level, which kind of does define the class. They're not the only class that does that. And they get their spellcasting at 1st level, but the real defining feature is Font of Magic, which gives them sorcery points. Sorcery points allow them to kind of adapt their spellcasting to the situation. At 2nd level, the only thing you can do is you can burn sorcery points to create additional spell slots, and you can burn spell slots to create additional sorcery points. They call it flexible casting, and it allows you to effectively change spell slots from one level to a number to another with some limitations. Each spell slot is worth a different number of sorcery points. So, like, a 1st level spell slot is worth 2 points. 2nd level is 3, 3rd is 5, 4th is 6, and 5th is 7. So in order to create a 5th level spell slot from other spell slots, you could burn a 1st and a 3rd level spell slot. You could burn a 2nd into the 3rd and have an extra sorcery point left over. You could do a 4th and a 1st and also have a sorcery point left over. There's a bunch of different ways, but it's not like a 1-to-1. You can't just go, oh, I'm going to take this 1st level, turn it into a 5th, because that'd be massively broken. It also means you can turn a 4th level spell slot into 2 2nd level spell slots. So there's a lot you can do with it. Each transition does take a bonus action, though. So changing a 4th level spell slot into 6 sorcery points is 1 bonus action. Taking 3 of those points and turning them into a 2nd level spell slot is another bonus action. However, if you do it outside of combat, you really aren't limited. Because you're not an initiative, so it'll just take you a few minutes to kind of shift around your spell slots. So yeah, that's the and then at 3rd level, they get a modification to their font of power, their sorcery points, in meta magic, which allows them to modify spells as they cast them. Sometimes that means turning a single action spell into a bonus action. Sometimes it means giving enemies disadvantage on their attack rolls, or making certain allies automatically make their saving throws. Not attack rolls, saving throws. Their saving throws against your spells, things like that. They're really cool, really useful. Makes the sorcerer very, very adaptable. I had the cleric spell list opened up from when I did the Divine Soul Sorcerer, and that's why I keep saying cleric, because it's written on the screen in front of me. So let's go to Storm's Sorcery. First level, you get two things. The first thing you get is Wind Speaker. You can speak, read, and write Primordial. Knowing this language allows you to understand and be understood by those who speak its dialects. Aquan, Orin, Ignan, and Titaran. Basically, Primordial is the elemental language. Aquan is water elementals. Orin is wind elementals. Ignan is fire elementals. And Terran is earth elementals. So, the first thing you get at first level is you just get an additional language, which theoretically could turn into 4 additional languages. I've said this before, knowing extra languages is really, really useful. It's a lot more useful than people say. Primordial is not one of the languages that's super useful. Unless you're doing kind of an elemental themed campaign, then it's massively useful. So if you're doing like the Temple of Elemental Evil, or Prince of the Apocalypse, which is the 5th edition version of that adventure, this would be really, really useful. If you are jumping between the elemental planes, which is a really, really cool campaign idea, this would be useful as well. Beyond that, though, not quite as useful as it could be. The other thing you get at first level is called Tempestuous Magic. Say that one 4 times fast. Starting at first level, you can use a bonus action on your turn to cause whirling gusts of elemental air to briefly surround you immediately before or after you cast a spell of first level or higher. Doing so allows you to fly up to 10 feet without provoking opportunity attacks. Effectively, anytime you cast a leveled spell, you can move, which is really, really useful. First things first, if you're in a sticky situation where you have, someone a little bit too close to you and you don't want to take opportunity attacks, it's a great way to do that. Anytime you just need to get somewhere where walking is not going to do it for you, 10 feet is not a huge distance, but it's enough of a distance that it can be useful. It can get you to the next level of a building. Most floors are only about 10 feet high. Things like that. Is it the most useful thing in the world? No, but the fact that it's any leveled spell means you're going to be able to do this almost constantly. The higher your level, the more chances that you're going to be using leveled spells almost all the time, because you just have that many spell slots. And again, with your Font of Magic, you can get extra spell slots if you need them by burning sorcerer points. So yeah, it's interesting. It does kind of show the difference between, like I mentioned before, between the Xanathars and the Sword Coast guides. We looked at two new classes in Xanathars, and they both had 2 really, really useful abilities. The Sword Coast Adventurers Guide one, you have one that is useful in very specific situations, and another one that's kind of useful but not super so. Yeah, not a whole lot more to say about that. However, at 6th level, you get another 2 features, which is not something the other 2 classes got. They only got 1 new feature every new thing. So kind of, mixes things up. First thing you get at 6th level is Heart of the Storm. You gain resistance to lightning and thunder damage, always nice. In addition, when you start casting a spell of first level or higher that deals lightning or the thunder damage, stormy magic erupts from you. This eruption causes creatures of your choice that you can see within 10 feet of you to take lightning or thunder damage. Choose each time this ability activates, equal to half your sorcery level. So this is where you start realizing that your spell choice for this class means a lot. Simply because anytime you do lightning, you start casting a spell that deals lightning or thunder damage, you get additional damage, which is 6th level. That's only 3 damage, but it's any creature of your choice. So you don't have to worry about hitting your allies within 10 feet, which is, it's a 20-foot radius area that's effectively a fireball. It does mean you need to be a little bit closer than normal. So this does kind of lead itself towards a more melee-styled cleric, which causes a little bit of issues simply because there's not a ton of melee spells that do lightning or thunder damage. They're generally ranged. So you're not technically going to be melee, but you're going to be a little more close range sorcerer with this. Again, if you compare this to the shadow mage, both are designed to be a little bit closer. The shadow mage gives you the tools to mitigate the damage that you're going to be taking. This one, technically it does with Tempestuous Magic. You basically can run in, cast your lightning or thunder spell, do the additional damage, and then fly back 10 feet and use the rest of your movement to get away. So you do have that, but this is much more of a hit and run style, fighting style. At 6th level, you have Storm Guide. You gain the ability to subtly control the weather around you. If it's raining, you can use an action to cause the rain to stop falling in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on you. You can end this effect as a bonus action. If it's windy, you can use a bonus action each round to choose the direction the wind blows in a 100-foot radius sphere centered on you. The wind blows in that direction until the end of your next turn. This feature doesn't alter the speed of the wind. This is almost purely roleplay with one specific instance of exploration. Causing the rain to stop falling is a parlor trick, to be blunt. It's cool that there's no limitation to how often you can do it. It just takes an action. So it is something, interesting. Oh, it's like raining cats and dogs. Boom. Not for us. Yeah, it's cool. But other than very, very specific instances where like maybe it's acid rain or maybe it's freezing rain and it's causing you to take constitution saves to avoid exhaustion or something like that. Other than that, it's a really, really limited ability. The windy one as well, choosing which direction the wind blows doesn't really change anything unless you are sailing. Something that a lot of people are kind of unaware of if you've never dealt with sailing is the wind. The wind blows a lot of different directions. And part of sailing is knowing the air currents and kind of choosing your route where you want to go based on where the air generally tends to blow. But the wind being precisely at your back and pushing you the exact direction you want is not a guaranteed thing, even if you know all your charts and everything like that. And so generally, a lot of times what happens is you have like your sail here, and you have the wind blowing this way, and the sail picks up the wind. And because the sail is pointed a certain direction, despite the fact that the wind is blowing this way, because the sail is pointed this way, and your rudder is forcing you to go that way, you will still be pulled in the direction that you want to go. But it will be significantly slower, because you're not getting the full pull. You're basically fighting against the wind to do that. With this, because a bonus action takes effectively 6 seconds, every 6 seconds, you can ensure that the wind is going the exact direction you want, meaning ships travel faster. You get exactly where you want. You can change the direction of the wind in 6 seconds, meaning the ships that you are on can turn significantly faster than any other ship on this sea. And it is a localized disturbance. It's only in a 100-foot radius. So your ship will be affected, and the other ships around you, if you're fleeing or pursuing, won't. So a storm sorcerer in a pirate campaign or in an aquatic campaign where you're on a ship is unbelievably useful for the exploration part. Otherwise, all of that is only useful for role playing, which again isn't a bad thing. But when you look at just how many abilities in the other ones that had more than just role-playing benefits, you start to see kind of the hindrances of this particular class or subclass. Going to 14th level, you get Storm's Fury. How about we try that again? Storm's Fury. When you're hit by a melee attack, you can use your reaction to deal lightning damage to the attacker. This damage equals your sorcerer level. The attacker must also make a strength saving throw against your sorcerer spell save DC. On a failed save, the attacker is pushed in a straight line up to 20 feet away from you. Now you're starting to see the benefits of this class as far as making it so you can survive attacks. As you get to higher levels, enemies generally don't just start doing more damage. They will, but the way they tend to do more damage is normally through multi-attack. At least as melee is concerned. With Storm's Fury, they can hit you once, and as long as they fail their save, they get pushed 20 feet away. They may not be able to get far enough up to be able to use the rest of their multi-attack, and they will lose that. And we talk about action economy all the time on here because it's really important in 5th edition. This is a wonderful way to rob melee enemies of their actions, because part of the thing that makes them dangerous is the fact that they, especially by 14th level, you're dealing with enemies that have multi-attack that give them 3 or 4 attacks in a turn. If they only get 1 attack and then they get blown back far enough that they can't get back up to you, you have just taken 2 to 3 actions from that side of the equation. That's a massive deal. This does mean, as a Storm Sorcerer, you do need to look at your spacing really well. Simply because ensuring that if anyone does want to melee attack you, they have to travel at least a little bit to get to you, will help ensure that when Storm's Fury does activate, they're going to waste the rest of their attacks. It also means, if you want to use this a little more aggressively, putting your Sorcerer a little more into harm's way is really beneficial for the rest of your team. Having a good Cleric or Bard or just someone that can keep your hit points up will be really, really essential to play that kind of aggressive style, because this requires you to get hit by melee attacks, requires you to take damage in order to use it. But if you can set it up with your team, this can be really, really effective in reducing the number of actions that the enemy gets. It is limited to your, you have to use your reaction to do it. So another thing you need to focus on when you're using this ability, if you're using it aggressively, is make sure only one person can get close enough to actually attack you. Because the second person that comes up, they're just going to get to wail on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Finally, at 18th level, you get Wind Soul. You gain immunity to lightning and thunder damage. Super useful, especially if you're dealing with something like maybe a blue dragon where they have lightning breath. You don't really have to worry about that. They can just lightning breath and you're like, la la la, la 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 la. So that's always fun. In addition to that, you also get a magical flying speed of 60 feet. Mobility. As an action, you can reduce your flying speed to 30 feet for 1 hour and choose a number of creatures within 30 feet of you equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier. The chosen creatures gain a magical flying speed of 30 feet for 1 hour. Once you reduce your flying speed this way, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. Okay. So, first of all, you have a permanent 60-foot flying speed. That's cool. We've already talked about how useful it can be to be a magical flying turret. And this gives you that. This doesn't just give you that ability. It increases your speed by 30 feet. You effectively have the same speed as a monk or a barbarian. Your base speed is now 60 feet, and you can fly all the time. Now, in addition to that, you can effectively turn your entire party into flyers. 3 plus your charisma modifier at 18th level. If you do not have a 20 charisma modifier as a sorcerer, you are probably playing you are not playing an optimized character. You're not even playing an unoptimized character. Like, again, by the time you get to 18th level, you only have one more ability score improvement. You really should have your charisma modifier maxed at this point. So that probably means you're going to be able to give up to 8 creatures a 30-foot flying speed. That is massive. Like, giving your entire party effectively, you have the effect of the fly spell for free. Lasts for an hour. You just need a short rest to get it back, so you can chill for an hour, and then go at it again. Like, it's just super awesome. And again, a ranged ranger that can fly can have tons of fun taking pot shots at creatures from 40 feet in the air. A flying monk can go over enemies and come in and stun them, and then get out of the way and do, like, it doesn't matter if you're melee, ranged, whatever. Flying is useful. Not to mention, it basically makes it so terrain is never going to be an issue for your party. So that in itself, super cool. As an 18th level ability, it's really awesome with just how much you can do with it. So final thoughts. Overall, I think this particular subclass gets much more useful in tier 3 than it is in tier 1 and 2. A lot of subclasses in general tend to heavy load the early levels because the sweet spot for 5th edition D&D is tier 2, generally between the levels of 5 and 12. Tier 2 is 5 to 10. Tier 3 is 11 to 16. So generally, most campaigns tend to take place between 1st and about 12th, 13th level. So a lot of subclasses will heavy load their early level stuff, and then their high level stuff, it doesn't really matter because most players never get to play that high. This one kind of does the opposite. Windspeaker is, again, it's cool, but it's very situational. If no one else in the world speaks Primordial, then there's no benefit to knowing Primordial, other than the fact that you can write notes in a language no one else can read. Tempestuous Magic is useful, and does allow you to be a little more of a hit-and-run style spellcaster, where you run in, cast your spells, and then kind of fly out and then move away. When you get to Herald of the Storm, you actually get a benefit to doing that hit-and-run style spellcasting, because whenever you get close enough to be within 10 feet of a bunch of people, they're going to take additional damage just from you being a Storm Sorcerer. So that can be a really interesting way to kind of get group damage and just increase your damage numbers. Storm Guide is almost purely role-playing, and even in a role-play sense, it's not that useful. Other than if you're on a ship, you become the MVP of any time you're on a ship, because there's just so much you can do by being able to control the wind. Other than that specific instance, Storm Guide just doesn't really give you much. However, once you get to Storm's Fury, where you can now knock people back that actually hit you, and especially once you get to Wind Soul, where you have your magical flying speed, combining that with the Tempestuous Magic, makes you very mobile. And then the ability to give all of your friends the ability to fly for an hour is even more useful. There's so many interesting, cool things that you can do. This one does really incentivize you to use mostly lightning and thunder based spells. But as long as you don't mind limiting yourself to mostly just using those spells, there's so much you can do with this class. And it is very interesting, especially from the hypermobility part. But like I said before, the best aspects of this class don't come until you hit 14th level and then 18th level. So this is one of those where if you're going to be playing a high level like one shot or something, like I'm running on my D&D channel, my Twitch channel right now, This is a really fun one to play for a high level one shot or maybe a high level kick a campaign where you start really high. Just because most of the cool things that you get at high levels. But other than that, yeah, it's okay. I think the other two, the ones that are original to Xanathars, are a little bit stronger. But this is not an underpowered class by any shape. It's just a little bit more limited than some of the other ones. Anyway, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoy this, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel so all of my videos get sent directly to your subscribe box. And then also hit the bell icon and turn notifications on, just in case I forget to schedule things the way they're supposed to, or my health takes a dive like it likes to do. And I release a video at a weird time. I can say once Van Richten's comes out, I'm going to be releasing that is releasing a review of that as soon as I physically can, so that'll come out at a weird time. But yeah, definitely do that in the comments down below. What do you think would be the most interesting combination of Heart of the Storm damage plus a spell? What lightning or thunder damage spell could you see being like your go-to combo for Heart of the Storm damage? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me, and I will see you guys next time. All right, bye-bye.